Welcome to episode 112 of the Ron and Brian podcast. And again, thank you for joining us. A new week, a new episode, and I am joined, as always, by the man who was Michael Cohen's restaurant date the other night, Brian. Brian, how goes it this week, sir?
You know, you always hate when you spend special time with someone, not sexy time. I'm not talking about, fun time. I'm saying, just you break bread with someone. It's, coming from the old country. I was brought up with the values that was
what old country was that, if I may just ask real quick?
Flushing, Queens.
Okay.
And you were taught that was the time where family members, your extended family, let's be honest, if you were sitting at the dinner table, you were family. Even if you were the neighborhood kid who, the neighbor who needed a little help, you were family. And to see someone like Michael Cohen, who absolutely deserves to be eating out, having a $50 steak on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, to think that somehow he's going to be punished for trying to help the local New York City restaurant economy. It's just not right.
It hurts. Well, I guess maybe we should toast to his honor, and what better way to do that than with the drink of the week?
Drink of the week.
Na zdrowie.
Salud. Drink of the week. Pleasure.
Drink of the week, drink of the week, drink of the
Brian,
week. Drink of the week.
what are you imbibing in this week?
Well, first off, we know that I'm drinking Broken Goblet because that is America's favorite brewery. If there was only some way that we could get Broken Goblet to realize how much support we are putting out there into the universe. I mean, think about it. We publish this podcast not just on the internet, but we also send it out via satellite into outer space. So there's aliens at some point listening, transcribing our podcast from English into whatever language they speak, and they're asking themselves, this Broken Goblet sure sounds like it makes a lot of tasty beverages. I wish I could get in on that action. But I am currently working on the Broken Goblet. Hold on, it's a mouthful. It's the blueberry maple French toast stout.
Yes,
with lactose, because we know that that's your jam. It's a nice look at that healthy color. It is a beaut.
And it's a hearty. I want to say it was clocking in at around 8% alcohol.
Well, we'll tell. I mean, if that's the case, it's going to be a good Patreon.
What do you think of it?
I don't really taste the maple.
Really?
Oh, no, I guess, no. I taste the sweetness. I taste the blueberry, but I don't get the French toast reference.
Okay. Maybe you're missing the lactose undertones. Maybe your palate just isn't as cultured as others.
I will take that hit because you know why? It's actually a fair assessment. I am trash. Ron, what are you working on?
Well, a very good friend of mine this past weekend brought me a bottle of Jameson cold brew whiskey. And the bottle says best served on ice. So I threw a little bit of ice in there. Literally have not tried this since you brought the bottle to the house. So this hitting my lips will be the very first time.
Oh, I am jealous. It is.
Fuck, that's good.
Yeah, right?
It's exactly how you would want it to taste. It's the whiskey taste with the nice, smooth, cold brew, taking away kind of the bitterness of the bite of the whiskey. Like I don't make whiskey face when I'm drinking this.
No, not at all. It goes down so smoothly. It's almost as if Broken Goblet had decided they were going to make a whiskey.
I mean, hopefully it won't give me whiskey dick also, but we'll find out later.
Ron, you've been married for several years. I would it really make a difference? Would you notice the difference?
No.
As you as you quietly climb onto your half of the bed while your wife is snoring on the other side, as you turn the light off on your end table, raise the covers over your face, and cry yourself to sleep for another night of loneliness.
Sounds about right. So I know this won't mean anything to the people listening to the podcast, but to those of you watching on the podcast, I thought I saw something on your right arm, Brian. Something
Oh yeah, I got a tattoo.
hasn't been there before. What is the tattoo? It looks like a skeleton. Appropriately enough, having a cocktail.
It's the Social Distortion logo.
Ah, okay.
It's shiny because I just put some what is it, Neosporin or Benadryl or what else, the
Got a
anti-bac.
Neosporin, I think you were.
Yeah, Neosporin. That's what it. So it's the logo. It's got the skeleton smoking a cigarette, having a martini.
All right.
You know what it was in the never-ending quest on Brian's part to support New York City and help bring it back from the death throes that we entered back in March as the coronavirus plague entered the city from Europe, not China, I would like to point out.
China.
Because Governor Cuomo told me that. Tattoo shops opened up this past Monday as we entered phase 3 of this attempt for us to get back to normal. So I reached out to the New York Hardcore Tattoo Shop located on the Lower East Side right there on whatever street they're located on. I want to say Stanton, but I don't know if that's correct.
People can Google it.
Well, they opened up on Monday. There was an article in the paper on Monday night that I saw in the New York Post inside the shop saying, hey, tattoo places are open. And there was in one of the photos, they said, if you're looking for an appointment, that you couldn't do walk-ins, appointments by, only. And they had the email address. I said, wow, tattoo shop's been closed for 3 months. They must have a real backlog of appointments. Let me put my name in there just so this way I get on the waiting list. Sent the email before I went to bed, masturbated, fell asleep, woke up the next morning, checked my phone after masturbating again. And the guy had written me back saying, I can see you today at 12.
Oh, wow. All right.
And
very nice.
At that point, I just said, that's the universe's way of saying, don't be a chicken, go in and get it done. So I had it done.
Fine that it's time. Well, it looks like some good work. I wish you the best with it. All right.
Well, it hasn't reached that itchy phase yet.
Yeah, that's the worst part. Well
I'm
hopefully
just gonna
keep that Neosporin on there. Hopefully it'll be okay. Why
sure
am I so raspy tonight? I have no idea.
Do you know why?
Why is that?
I'll tell you why. First off, because you're drinking whiskey and normally not your lactose-infused beer, but also because there's no carpet on the floor. So what happens
the carpet has been removed from here.
The carpet in that room normally would absorb the allergens and dust that are in the air. Unfortunately, because you're now walking on a wood floor, your footsteps are kicking it back up into the aerated environment, and you're breathing them in.
I think what it might have been is I had one of my final Invisalign appointments today.
Get out of here.
They took the spacers off the front of my teeth, which I didn't realize was going to involve them like grinding them off. So it was like literally smoking out of my mouth. And then they had to glue a wire to the back of my front and bottom teeth to keep them from moving. And so my mouth was basically like stuck open for like 45 minutes while they did that. So I feel like I probably got a little dried out.
Now, that's almost as long as when you and I went down to Hampton Bay, Virginia for Fleet Week. And if I remember correctly, your mouth was stuck wide open for 75 straight minutes as you appeased the crew from the USS Eisenhower.
I knew you were going somewhere wrong with that. So let's just let's cut that story short and see what happened this week in racism.
This
Week.
in
Racism.
racism.
So you remember how I said last week where it was really, really depressing and I just eventually had to stop typing up stories?
We made a comeback, right? We defeated racism this week.
No. Even more than last week. But I trudged through it and wrote down as many of them as I could. So literally a 2-page document front and back for this little chat here. So let's see what we had here. Going down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Bridget DiGirolamo was arrested Monday after threatening a black family with a baseball bat and a firearm. Demetra Turner Lewis was driving through a residential neighborhood with her family when DiGirolamo approached their vehicle waving a bat and cursing. She then went back to her house and got a gun, which she then waved at them. She was booked for aggravated assault and criminal damage to property. She's also undergoing a workplace probe by the East Baton Rouge Paris system, where she is a physical education teacher.
Now, if she is found guilty of these charges, she will have a very different type of probe when she is locked up.
Very true.
I'm sure that's the only case of a white woman pulling a gun on a black woman, right?
Let's see here. Well, you're jumping ahead a little bit, but I will go to that one now. Down in Oakland County, Michigan, a white woman who was caught on video pulling a gun on a black woman and her teen daughter in a Chipotle parking lot has been charged with felonious assault. The video went viral after Jillian Wustenberg pointed the gun at Tequila Hill and her daughter. Jillian's husband, Eric, was also arrested and charged with assault, and both of them had their guns confiscated. That was what I think you were referring to.
Yeah, and that was gross because I watched that video.
Yeah. Jones County, Mississippi, election commissioner Gail Harrison Welch is under fire for a Facebook post she made commenting that, quote, the blacks are having lots of voter registration events and saying that, quote, people in Mississippi have to get involved too. She claims that she is just trying to get as many people as possible to register despite their color. Oh, yeah, and that she meant to send the Facebook post as a private message rather than post it. So
as if that makes any difference.
Quiet. Yeah. Let's see. Russellville, Arkansas. 6-year-old Journey Brockman was kicked out of his kids' learning center due to wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. Patricia Brown, director of the center, said that they feel a childcare environment is not a place for political views, regardless of race.
Really?
I'm not aware of that, saying that Black Lives Matter is a political issue. You would think it's just more of a human issue.
Only in conservative America has everything become a political agenda.
True. Wake Forest, North Carolina, an interracial family living in the Wakefield Estates neighborhood received an unsigned letter warning them against posting any Black Lives Matter signs in their yard. The letter states that, quote, no one is interested in your or their struggles, and that, quote, most of us would not hesitate to call the police if your kids or husband get unruly. Wakefield Estates, a little bit of history, was previously known as Wakefield Plantation. A lot of racism there.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Going out to the West Coast, Martinez, California, Nicole Anderson and David Nelson were both charged with 3 misdemeanors, including a hate crime violation for painting over a Black Lives Matter mural on a downtown Martinez street. A video capturing the incident went viral on July 4th, showing Anderson splattering black paint on the mural and using a roller to cover the letters. Going to Woodstock, Georgia, a video went viral showing 2 white employees at a Jimmy John's doing a mock lynching with a noose made out of dough. The 2 employees and the manager of the store were fired due to the incident. Yeah. Going back to the West Coast. This is still the first page of the paper, by the way.
You know what? Can I interrupt you?
Of course.
I want to say something right now. And you were, a couple weeks ago, you had verbalized a hesitancy to continue doing This Week in Racism.
True.
And you had basically said that you felt that you weren't sure if it was still appropriate to discuss stories like this. In what's gone on over the past couple weeks, I'm going to say that I am very proud that we are still doing this bit.
I think we need to continue to get the news out there.
This is literally fucking scary, that this is the reality that American people are going through on a regular daily basis.
Yes.
And you're not even done yet. Keep going.
Nope. Going back out to the West Coast, Marin County, California, a woman was filmed harassing an Asian American family that was hiking on a trail with their dog on the 4th of July. The woman and her husband blocked the path of the family's 11-year-old daughter, claiming that they were breaking the law by having their dog with them. As the situation escalated, the woman told the family, quote, "You can't be in this country," before threatening to call the police. The internet eventually identified the woman as Beth Tasca. Tasca had been employed as chief people officer for Topa Equities, who announced that they accepted her resignation on Tuesday after an internal review of the incident. Going down south to Elizabethton, Tennessee, a woman was caught on a viral video shouting racial and homophobic slurs at a Black Lives Matter rally. Sonia Holt was seen yelling, quote, "White lives matter, white lives are better," and telling a protester, quote, "You're a gay homosexual piece of crap who's going to burn in hell."
Which may be true. Hold on a second.
Possibly.
Her ugliness in terms of her soul does not necessarily automatically negate that the person she's talking to is also, what did she say to them?
That they're a gay homosexual piece of crap who's going to burn in hell.
Yeah, I mean, that is very possible. I can't rule that out. I'm just saying she's still a horrible person.
Well, and she had been employed at the Keith Family Vision Clinic in Johnson City, but they announced on Monday that they had cut ties with her. Out in Denver, Colorado, a woman was filmed chasing a black man out of a neighborhood while walking her dog. As soon as she noticed she was filmed, she turned around and left the area. Again, lots from California this week. Going out to North Hollywood, California, volunteers at the St. Paul's First Lutheran Church went to extreme lengths to remove a black woman that had been sitting peacefully on their grass. Alex Marshall Brown, a stunt woman and actor, started to video the incident as it escalated. 2 men from the church came out and nailed a no trespassing sign onto the tree where she was sitting. The men didn't have any good reason why they were kicking her off the lawn, but one of them told her, quote, "All lives matter." The church has since apologized for the incident and has said they will do a better job of training their staff.
Jesus would be proud. Jesus would be so proud of those guys.
Staying out in California, this in Carmel Valley, the CEO of a San Francisco-based tech company was caught on video harassing an Asian American family that was having a birthday dinner at a restaurant he was dining at. In the video, Michael Lofthouse makes such statements as, quote, "Fuck you Asians, go back to whatever fucking Asian country you're from, you don't belong here, and Trump is going to fuck you." Afterwards, Lofthouse got into an argument with someone on social media, calling them a, quote, "Asian fuck," and threatening to kill them. Lofthouse has since apologized for his actions. In July 2016, just as a side note, Lofthouse had been found guilty of vandalism and had a restraining order placed on him. He had also been facing charges of domestic violence and the destruction of telephone lines in the same incident, but those charges were dropped. So just a peach of an individual there.
How do you just kind of apologize after that and kind of hope it just goes away?
And that's what he is attempting to do. So he is the CEO of a company called Solid 8. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure what they do, but just keep that in mind when you're out there.
Something tells me they're not doing a lot of business this week.
Out in St. Paul, Minnesota, a Muslim teen has filed a human rights complaint after a barista at a Target Starbucks gave her a cup with ISIS written on it instead of her name. The Target claims that the barista misheard the teen's name, which is Aisha. Her human rights complaint states that the manager offered her a free drink and a $25 gift card, and then she was escorted out by security.
Okay, now if they wrote ISIS on the name of, or even if they wrote fat nosed Jew on my cup, I would take a free cup and a $25 card, and I would walk away happily.
Okay, that's you though. I mean, she's.
Oh no, what they did to her is absolutely tremendously evil, and those people should all be fired and never be able to earn a living wage in this country. If it were me personally, I would take awful things because Starbucks is outrageously priced. So that $25 gift card literally buys you about 3 cups of coffee.
Gets you a macchiato and maybe 2 cake pops. I think that would just about cover it.
And those cake pops, those cake pops will also give you diabetes.
True. Going down to Florida, because it really isn't a good week in racism if we don't go to Florida. This from North Miami-Dade. Joseph Fuchek was captured on video waving a pistol at a black homeowner while going on a racist rant. And you're going to say to yourself, Ron, that's horrible that he's a racist, but we're going to double down. He's not just a racist. He also deals in stolen valor. During the rant, Fuchek claimed to have been a 35-year Navy SEAL and pointed out his Purple Heart license plates. However, when the homeowner that he threatened, Dwayne Wynn, contacted police, they conducted a search of Fuchek's apartment, finding a Purple Heart, Navy certificates, and dress uniforms, all of which turned out to be not real. He also has forged documentation to get a Purple Heart license plate in the state of Florida. He has been charged with aggravated assault with prejudice, which is a hate crime enhancement that makes the crime punishable with up to 15 years in prison.
Good.
This is another guy who's great, was charged with stalking an ex-wife, threatening an ex-wife's husband, all that good stuff. But I think one of the
are we still on page 1?
That was we're on page 2. We're at our last story finally.
Fuck it! This is so depressing that this is what our country has become. And let me rephrase it: this has probably always been what our country is.
Oh yeah,
it's the fact that we have lived in a world where this shit was off the radar, unpublicized, and people like you and I. When I say people, I mean cis white males living in affluent neighborhoods, we're being exposed to it.
Our last one, and I think our worst one, is Monroe County, Indiana, at the attempted lynching of civil rights activist Vox Booker. He is Black. He's a member of the Monroe County Human Rights Commission. Was at a party at Monroe Lake near Bloomington over 4th of July weekend. Said a group of white men pinned him against a tree, shouted racial slurs, and one of them threatened to get a noose. Much of the assault was captured on cell phone by Booker's friends and shows the 36-year-old on all fours being held down by a white man as witnesses shout for his release. I guess not surprisingly, none of the white men, even though they have all been identified and are all on video, have been charged. So the FBI apparently is involved in the investigation right now. There has been a call across the internet for people to reach out to the Monroe County prosecutor to push for charges against these 3 men. Nothing as of yet. And apparently also people throwing shade at the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, because apparently that's who polices the park. And when they called them, it took about an hour and a half for any of the natural resource officers to come assist them.
Do we have the contact information for the Monroe County Sheriff's Office or police department?
I believe Matt Beaker, our producer, reached out to them earlier this week asking if they would like to comment on the episode, but we can certainly share that information on our social media if people want to reach out on their own. As always, you can go to ronandbrianpodcast.com for links to all of our social media.
That last story was and you saved it for last for a reason, but that was fuck. It was so disturbing to watch because it wasn't a quick outrage. It wasn't a 4-second video. This was a Black man being held down by 4 people. Like, it wasn't just one, it was 4 people surrounding him, holding him down, and being surrounded by people that were videotaping. That must have just been utterly terrifying.
So hopefully now that the FBI is involved, something will happen because of that. And before we exit this week in racism, let's have a quick racism rewind.
Racism rewind.
So weeks ago, we had told the story of Amy Cooper. She was the woman who had called the police on a Black man who had asked her to put her dog on a leash while in the ramble in New York City's Central Park. It has now come out that she is going to be charged with filing a false police report. But interestingly enough, Christian Cooper, the man that she called the police on, will not be cooperating with the DA's investigation because he feels between her international shaming, losing her dog, and everything else that she has been punished enough. Thoughts on that, Brian?
I cannot put I cannot put myself in that man's shoes.
True.
I wasn't there. I did not witness it. I saw the video he took. Has that woman paid? Yes. Under today's racial climate, do I think that it would make me feel more satisfied to see her punished more? Yes. Is it possible this man's taking the high road? Yeah. I think that the greater of an example that we can shine a light on people and their absolute horrible behavior, I'm all in favor of it.
All right. I mean, if nothing else, it shows that he's definitely being the bigger man, that he feels that in his mind, justice has been doled out.
Which
maybe he's right, maybe he's not. Again, I would imagine though, with the video evidence that's already out there, he doesn't really need to testify. Like I think there's enough information out there to charge her.
I also heard that there is the code of bird watchers, which is don't snitch. I mean, it's, when you think of street gangs, it's the Bloods and the Crips level Latin Kings, only because they don't quite have the national cred, but they are seen in certain areas as being more powerful than the Bloods and the Crips. And right under the Latin Kings are bird watchers who walk through city parks with their binoculars.
And well, I mean, as is a well-known saying in the bird watching community, snitches get finches.
How the hell did you come up with that so quickly?
Right off the top of my head. It's the alcohol.
Fucking hell, that's awesome. Tell me, is that whiskey not good?
Love this whiskey. I already love this whiskey. But interestingly enough, also from the tune of Amy Cooper, there is a politician in San Francisco that has introduced the Karen Act. This is the Caution Against Racially Exploitative Non-Emergencies, which would make it a crime for people to make racially based 911 calls.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see if that's actually able to pass, and if it is able to pass, whether it's held up as being constitutional or not.
Well, I think it's going to pass. In San Francisco, they are quite liberal there.
True. But again, the courts have protected hate speech as a level of free speech to an extent, but would that extend to a situation when it is putting a burden on a law enforcement service or things of that nature? It'd be interesting to see that play out in court.
I'm sorry. Are we still worrying about whether stuff's constitutional or not?
It's rare, but sometimes
I didn't think
worry about that.
Over the past 3.5 years, I don't think we've been paying attention to that shit anymore. Speaking of which, is it just me, or does the Supreme Court seem like they've taken the past 51 weeks off and decided to work this week?
They have rolled out a number of judgments this week. They stripping women of their rights from a free healthcare, I should say, free birth control standpoint. If your employer or school wants to, deny you birth control
out of it
for ethical or religious reasons, that is now allowed. Again, more example of the reason that your healthcare should not be tied to your work or to your employer. Another reason to make it a government funded program.
But it actually makes sense in the sense, and maybe it's my my higher plane of thought, as I am a libertarian. But if you're a religious organization that doesn't believe in abortion, then I think, it's not necessarily right that the government forces you to support free birth control. In the same way that I believe that people who are employed by religious organizations and what was the other, was it schools?
Schools, yes.
Yeah, go work for somewhere else. Like no, and I mean this, and I know it's easier said than done, but I genuinely feel this way. We literally need to break down this society because we're forcing agendas on each other. The conservatives are forcing their agenda on liberals. Liberals are forcing their agendas on conservatives, and it's making everyone unhappy. I think the world would be a lot better if the evangelicals got their slice of the pie and they could literally do whatever the fuck they want. They could watch Jim Baker jerk off over what was the preacher? Oh, no. Who was the preacher that did the coronavirus song? He was like, cast you out. Coronavirus.
Kenneth Copeland, yes.
You know what? The people that don't believe that employers should pay for, as part of our company-sponsored healthcare, those people that don't believe that their boss should have to contribute towards a health plan that covers birth control, let them go live in a world with Kenneth Copeland and Jim Baker selling his coronavirus elixirs. You know what? People who do believe that paid for birth control is something that's important, they should move to the fucking coast and live like enlightened human beings. And you know what?
Here's my thought, if I may jump in here for a second. If we want to allow religious beliefs to weigh so heavily on our society and how things are done, then let churches pay taxes.
100% agree with you.
And if they don't want to do that, I'm sorry, your opinion doesn't get to be factored in and into society, into the workplace, into people that pay into it. It's kind of like it's the thing that George Carlin, his old joke. You want to participate? Pay the fucking admission fee like everybody else.
Yes. I remember one of his lines, which I think we're going to hear a lot more of over the next couple of months, is that bit he did where he says that if you don't vote, you don't have a say. You don't have the right to bitch about the system.
Yeah.
Or did he say the opposite?
He said the opposite. He said you can bitch about anything if you want.
Damn it! Fuck.
Maybe you don't want to pull that one out just yet.
As I was saying it, I sat there. I'm like, wait a second. I think he said that because
wrong.
He said, if I remember correctly, he said he has every right to bitch about everything because he's not responsible for voting any of these fuckers into power.
His point of view was the opposite. Like, you know what? It's not my damn fault at all because I didn't vote for anybody. One way to look.
Damn it.
What else did the Supreme Court do?
Can we edit that out? I don't like being embarrassed on the podcast.
Well, wink, we'll edit that out.
Can you write that down in your notes to Matt and say, let Beaker know that what we need to do is to, at that moment, what is this, the 36 minute mark? Just edit out the part where I quote George Carlin.
Yeah, something like that.
All right, now let's go back into the podcast on 3, 2, 1.
Let's see. What else did the Supreme Court do?
What else do they do here, Ron? They ruled today a couple rulings which I found interesting, both having to do with President Trump's tax returns, where they ruled that Congress has no right to order the release of his tax returns, but they ruled that the Southern District Court in New York is allowed to demand his tax returns, which I felt was a somewhat what's what I'm thinking of. It felt like a double standard, but based on the logic, I kind of got it. Where it's in, I'm sure you're going to correct me because every now and then I may not get facts correct. But the way it seemed was Congress wants it to use as a political tool, whereas the courts, the prosecutors in New York want to use it because they believe crimes have actually taken place and they're looking into prosecuting those crimes.
Yes, you have actually gotten this one correct. So Kudos to you, my friend. Yeah. So the argument was that basically, the prosecutors in New York technically have standing to ask for this information because it is, potentially for a court case or various court cases where, yes, they felt it had the information been given to the House of Representatives, could have been politicized, yada, yada, yada. Regardless, people are saying that even though the fact that the Southern District of New York has the ability to get these tax returns, odds are no one will see them prior to the election.
I don't know that there's going to be many votes that will be swayed in one direction when those tax returns are released.
I don't think I'm going to be surprised.
I am genuinely, and I would love to interview a undecided voter.
We'll have to try and find someone. We'll put it out there. If there's an undecided voter, they can come on the Ron and Brian podcast and explain what exactly is keeping them from tipping in one direction or the other.
Yeah, where do they see the pros and cons on both sides? I would really be interested in hearing that, only because I know you were activated a couple months ago. I got triggered recently, and it seems just as if people have really dug in their heels in terms of, this is what I believe, this is what I'm going to do. And there's always undecideds. I'm really interested in hearing the viewpoint and thought process of someone who is watching this country right now saying, yeah, I'm really not sure what I'm going to do. I don't know.
There you go. Supreme Court also ruled Thursday that a large swath of eastern Oklahoma, including Tulsa, is Native American land for purposes of federal criminal law.
Can you explain the significance of this to me? Because it went right over my head.
All right. So basically, what the case hinges on, I'm sure you remember the Trail of Tears, where groups of the Creek Nation was basically moved from other states and moved into Oklahoma. Yeah, and it was basically stated that, this portion of Oklahoma would always be considered Indian land. And over the years, the state has basically, enforced their laws across the entire state, where technically, if it's Indian land, those should fall under
sovereign land. Yes.
So that's really what the question came to. And apparently there was a gentleman by the name of, I'm going to find it here somewhere.
Chief Jay Strongbow?
Not Chief Jay Strongbow, although he was one of my favorite wrestlers as a kid. But there was someone who had been arrested and was being charged. And so
Wahoo McDaniel?
Not Wahoo McDaniel, not Tatanka. I'll throw out any other Native American wrestlers out there.
Good one.
This was Jimcy McGirt. He is a member of the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. He had been arrested and charged on not Joe Dirt.
No, did you say Jimcy McDirt?
Jimcy McGirt.
God damn it, I have him in my death pool in 2020.
Well, you may be lucky, because who knows how he's going to fare. But he was being charged for sex crimes against a minor, actually was serving a life sentence, and argued that only the federal government should be allowed to prosecute his case because it took place on Indian lands. And so kind of begrudgingly, 5 of the Supreme Court justices, the 4 liberal judges, and Neil Gorsuch ruled in favor of that it was still Indian land because Congress has not addressed that matter. Now, what this could potentially do is vacate thousands of judgments that have taken place on that land on a state level. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Neil Gorsuch seems to have grown a pair of balls once he's got in there. He ain't perfect.
Apparently, the way that he reads the law, he apparently adheres to.
I hope he reads it in English.
He adheres to something called textualism, which is a theory that Anton Scalia used to apparently follow. And
we didn't like him.
He starts the analysis with a strong focus on the words of the law and not what Congress may have meant at the time. So he doesn't look at a law in the context of what was going on in the world when that law was written. He just looks at the words at face value. So he tries not to be swayed by what may have been happening in the world.
Okay, that's interesting.
But
because
crazy week in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I thought Scalia was a whack bitch, if I'm not correct.
he was very conservative, very right wing. Yeah.
I when he died, I shed not a tear.
Not many people did. I mean, conservatives did, but not us. You know what
Oh.
we forgot, Brian? We rushed right into Supreme Court renderings. We missed Beef of the Week.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I mean, if you want to play the theme song, go for it.
Ron and Brian's Beef of the Week.
Wow. Are you telling me you have no beef this week?
No, I'm going to tell you that the beef that I had went right out the window listening to all the different examples of abject racism that have taken place in this country over the past 7 days. Like those were all stories that took place since we last recorded exactly a week ago tonight. And
how I feel,
no matter what complaint I may have in my life, it was holy fuck. This country is there's a lot of disgusting people that are my countrymen and women, and it saddens me that these are my brethren, and it saddens me even more that there are people that are my countrymen and women who have a reality where literally in so many of these instances where they are causing no dispute or issues, have become victims of being placed in a position where their lives are on the line. That is my beef of the week. Is fucking racism in America.
Okay.
It's
then I don't even want to talk about my beef.
Ron.
I feel
Ron, this is the price you pay when you ask me first.
You're true. I should know this by now.
Ron.
Yes.
What's bothering you this week?
I feel we should just move on at this point.
No. Listen, the issues that are most impacting your life should be discussed. Your grievances need to be aired.
So, all right, we had a rainstorm this week, very heavy. I got about 5 to 6 inches of rain in about 60 minutes.
And somebody pulled a gun and threatened to kill you.
Well, no. I thought the house was going to flood. It didn't, but we started.
Someone called the cops while holding you down onto the ground.
We were getting some water in one of the walls of our laundry room, and so I grabbed my can of Flex Seal because Flex Seal says it should work in dry or wet conditions, and sprayed some Flex Seal in the hole to try and keep the water from coming in, and it didn't work.
And then somebody approached you while you were applying that Flex Seal and said that you're not welcome in this country and you need to go back where you are, and they threatened to call the cops.
No, my wife just brought me the wet back. But
let me get this straight.
They in the commercial they make a boat out of it, Brian, and they say you can put it on when it's wet, and that's a lie, and that's my beef. So, but now I feel bad. Now you've officially made me feel bad.
Fuck. Let me ask you a question, and I hope you can be honest with me.
Sure.
Do you feel bad because the Flex Seal product didn't work? Or do you feel bad that during a week when horrific racist episodes have been perpetrated by white people in this country on minorities, that during a week when all this took place, you saw your biggest complaint being a product called Flex Seal didn't properly work?
I'm going to go a little from column A and a little from column B, if that's all right.
And how do you feel about yourself right now, Ron?
I don't feel great, which maybe might be for next week. We'll have to wait and see.
Because last week I was your beef.
True.
And now you're telling me that I'm going to be your beef again next week.
It's very possible. It's a very codependent relationship we have here on this podcast. You hurt
I could
me
not live.
like
I don't think I could live without you.
well, and that's why it's codependent. We depend on each other, even though we hurt each other. Anyway, let's talking about hurting people. Let's talk about the coronavirus, and let's talk about yes.
Can we talk about something that really hurts us even more than coronavirus?
What's that?
Can we talk about Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga on Netflix?
So I take it you didn't like the new Will Ferrell, Rachel McAdams rom-com on Netflix.
That's not the issue.
No,
the issue is that the person who I am codependent with recommended it to me, saying it was enjoyable.
We said it was watchable. I don't know that we said it was enjoyable.
I'll go back and look through the text. Hold on.
Right. That's fine. Listen, they're not.
Hold on.
We're not.
Yes, it says it right here. The wife and I absolutely fucking love this. Must watch. 10 out of 10. Yes, bitch. Will Ferrell slays again.
I feel that's a lie.
No, it says it right here on my phone. Look.
But did you, while we're talking about things we're watching, did you enjoy Hamilton?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I thought I had an idea what it was. It was a much better story than I was expecting. It really is a deep biographical piece that covers not just Alexander Hamilton's life, but what were the events going on around him, which when you think about it, was really an interesting time to be an American. And what Hamilton taught me was that the experience of being a black man or a Hispanic man in America in 1776 was really good, because I didn't see any slaves during any of that.
I don't think that's the message that he was trying to put out there.
I really enjoyed it. I would very much like to see it performed on a stage.
It's done. I will say this, and there is nothing quite like live theater. So having seen it live, it's excellent done live. Where I feel you get kind of an advantage from the movie is that you have a much better opportunity of seeing the facial expressions of the actors as they perform, and I think that brought it to a different level. So I think there are parts of the live show that are fantastic, and I think there are parts of the movie that are more enjoyable unless you're able to afford like a front row seat at Hamilton.
Yeah, I was about to say, is that your way of saying that you were like all the way in the back row?
I mean, we weren't even sitting all. I mean, we were probably middle of the theater. And again, just the fact that they had the ability to close up on faces and really, get involved. My main takeaway from when I saw Hamilton on Broadway and even watching the movie is the fact that our politicians have always been flawed. That what we have seen with Donald Trump, what we saw with Bill Clinton, as far as the arrogance, infidelity, things of that nature, is really not new when you go back and you look at the characters. And again, understanding that Lin-Manuel Miranda took some creative license with some of these characters, but when you read up on it afterwards, the founding fathers, the politicians when this country were started, were as flawed as our politicians today are.
They were human beings,
right?
Like I think in modern history, the only person that I can think of that was flawless was Mahatma Gandhi. And if I'm not correct, there was some shady shit with that guy too, allegedly.
I mean, he was big into torture porn. A lot of people don't know that.
Well, it was the whole starving thing. And then he liked watching pregnant women being double teamed while they were talking about naming the baby. Like, No, but like there's some allegations that he wasn't perfect,
right? But,
and that but in the grand scheme of things, we are all human beings, and I think you're perfect. I am deeply flawed, but like I think like every human being has some really amazing positive character traits, and they also have some flaws, with the exception of the people we highlighted during This Week in Racism, where they're all fucking scumbags and they should all be burned to death in terrible, awesome ways.
It seems though at some point society started putting politicians on a pedestal, and
I think
you had to respect your congressman and your president and everything else. So there definitely was, back in, from what it seems, back when the country was founded, like people were very aware of the individuals, and again, I think probably because the country was smaller, and like you literally could live next door to your congressman, you could live next door to your representative, and now it seems as with part of the wealth inequity, the people that have gotten into politics and make a fortune doing it, become even more separated from the common man. And again, I think the blinders started to come off with Bill Clinton, with his affair with Monica Lewinsky, and
Gary Hart. We've spoken about this before. Gary Hart was really the beginning of the let's pull these people down because they're not perfect. It wasn't that long ago that John Kennedy was literally having affairs left and right.
Yeah.
The media knew all about it, but they sat there and said, that's the president, and we can't speak ill of the president.
And look at that. That was, what, 50 years ago?
60.
Something like that. So, I mean, if you look at how the media handled a situation like a presidential infidelity then, and now it's the main story for 24 hours until whatever the next piece of trash that comes out is.
If Trump it doesn't evenly apply his bronzer, that's a news story, and like that becomes hey, let's take this guy down.
But I guess my point is, one of the things that put in perspective for me is, even though Donald Trump is a horrible individual, we have had a number of horrible individuals in government for the life of our country. I think he's just more proud of it, more vocal of it, and doesn't give a shit about what people think about it.
I don't think that he is aware that he is a horrible individual.
No.
So I don't think he's proud that he's an awful individual. I think that he feels he is a great person that should be looked up to by all Americans, and is outraged when anyone says anything negative about him. Like I use myself, as a comparison point, because I think it's just natural to compare yourself to Donald Trump.
Of course.
Two men born in Queens, New York, involved in the real estate industry in New York. I mean, the similarities striking, by the way.
Frightening at times.
But like, if someone were to pull me aside and be like, listen, I think you're a terrible human being, I would sit there and be like, what took you so long? Like, why didn't you realize this sooner? Whereas I think he genuinely has lived inside of this bubble of being surrounded by sycophants that tell him exactly what he wants to hear, that I think that when confronted by a flaw, he refuses to see it as such, because I don't think he's ever had to confront that he's wrong, that he's not right. Like, whereas I think you look at, Clinton knew damn fucking well what he did was wrong.
Yeah.
And that he tried to just be lawyerly and see if he could find some like middle ground where what does is when you say is, what is
that? What does is mean? One of my favorite lines of obfuscation and bullshit ever stated.
The second that came out, I lost all respect for him.
Yeah.
Because I was perfectly okay knowing that he was the kind of guy that, instead of doing his job, was prioritizing sneaking a 22-year-old into the Oval Office so he could get a blowjob underneath the desk.
Listen, he was all getting his dick wet, and we get it.
didn't make me proud. It didn't make me be like, oh yeah, that's my president. But like, at least I sat there and I was just like, all right, so that's who he is.
Nice.
But when he actually sat there and tried to justify that he didn't lie because he had a different definition of the word is.
Yeah.
It was like, no, you're actually just a legal scumbag like everyone else.
Now, speaking of Trump, we were going to talk about this. His Tulsa rally apparently resulting in a spike in coronavirus cases in Tulsa. Herman Cain, the Godfather pizza man and former presidential candidate, bragging at one point on Twitter that he was attending the Tulsa rally.
I thought you were just going to call him the Godfather of funk. I don't know why when you said the Godfather, I was just like, of funk?
But that was one of the more, and again, coronavirus is not hilarious, but when you see...
when Herman Cain gets it, it is fucking hilarious.
When Herman Cain tweets, like, I'm going to be at the Tulsa rally, and we're not going to be scared off by the hoax and the liberals and blah, blah, blah. And then, like, 12 days later, his Twitter account, Herman Cain has been admitted to the hospital with COVID, and we wish him all the best. Like, that's kind of fucking hilarious. I'm not going to lie about that.
Also, Donald Jr.'s girlfriend, the Fox bitch.
Kimberly Tinfoil was, that's the last name, right?
Tinfoil?
Tinfoil? Yeah. Guilfoyle? Whatever.
By the way, that woman has had so much work done on that face. If I cared the least, I would go back and look at what she looked like when she first started coming up. Because I'm going to tell you, none of this face that she's walking down the street with is real.
Well, and this is what shocked me. I did not feel that Kimberly Guilfoyle had enough natural human tissue left to acquire the COVID virus. And that is what surprised me.
Though I will say that I find it unnerving that she's getting coronavirus and is seemingly healthy, because I believe
asymptomatic.
It makes me nervous that feeds into the belief system of Donald Trump and his minions, that this is a made-up Democratic hoax. And as somebody who has the coronavirus antibodies flowing through my blood,
that you do,
and who survived the symptoms of coronavirus, I was able to self-quarantine for the 3 to 4 weeks that I was sick. I did not need to be admitted to the hospital. I don't want to make this about myself, but I think it's important to talk about my journey. As someone who was able to self-quarantine, I did not need to be hospitalized. I fortunately did not pass away in Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, where they were unable to handle the influx of dead from the coronavirus, necessitating them to use forklifts to carry out corpses in body bags into refrigerated trucks parked outside the hospital. I'm sorry, Ron, where was I? I lost my thought. We're talking about Kimberly. Oh yeah, it feeds their narrative that this is not a dangerous disease, that we should protect ourselves from spreading to others.
Right. And more cases, more deaths this week. One that was, I didn't know the guy, but Nick Cordero, Broadway actor who had starred in Rock of Ages and Waitress.
I saw him on Hamilton.
I don't believe he was in Hamilton, but he passed away due to complications of COVID-19. And this was, he was a 41-year-old man, a man who seemed to be in relatively decent health, was in the ICU for more than 90 days, underwent a leg amputation in April. He was put into a medically induced coma until mid-May. And then, when he came out of his coma, was told that he was going to need a double lung transplant. And then passed away, leaving a wife and a 1-year-old son. This is the thing that I don't think people look at when, everyone now keeps focusing on the number of cases versus the number of deaths. And everybody's like, oh, there's not as many deaths now. Does this even really qualify as a pandemic? But the way that people's lives are being impacted, we're now, there are articles out there about long-term brain damage, lung damage, people that, are being incapacitated for 30, 60, 90 days. People aren't focusing on the results of the disease. Like, how many people are not going to be able to work ever if they recover from this? How many people are going to be saddled with ridiculous medical debt? I mean, we see stories of people that, were in ICU for 2 months and
got a bill for $1 million.
With $1 million in debt.
Yeah.
And think about this. Prior to the pandemic, medical debt was one of the top causes of bankruptcy for people in the United States.
Yeah.
So, you're going to have people where it bankrupts them. You're going to have people where they can't work anymore. So for people to say, oh, the deaths are going down, what is the long-term effect of all of these thousands and thousands of cases, 60,000 new cases a day? And the fact that people are okay with that, it boggles my mind that we feel like if someone doesn't die from a disease, that the disease is okay.
We don't care if somebody dies from the disease. We care if somebody we know and love cares about it. But if it's some stranger on the other side of town, American, we don't give a shit about that. We're like, well, sucks to be them, not me.
And we've talked about this with sports. I mean, Major League Baseball is trying to get going again. They keep getting additional cases. NBA trying to get going again in their athlete bubble, so they say, in Disneyland. They're seeing cases. It's ridiculous.
Can I ask a legitimate question right now?
I would hope the only questions you would ask would be legitimate ones.
Okay. That's actually a compliment. It implies that I'm capable of regularly asking legitimate questions. Considering the level of the coronavirus spread, the community spread within the state of Florida, why is it that the major sports have all seemed to agree that Florida is the state where they're going to bring all their players to participate in these sporting events? My understanding is that the NBA is going to play out the rest of their season in Orlando, Florida, which if you look at the numbers, that county is a very high rate of coronavirus. MLS, the American Soccer League, some people may argue whether that's a sport or not. I'm not going to get sucked into semantics. That has already had entire teams back out of a season that they were planning on playing in Florida, because entire teams are saying our players are sick and it's not worth it for us to go through with this. The last I heard, baseball was still planning on playing a lot of their games in Florida, if not all.
I think.
Why have they picked? Did you just cut me off?
Sorry, my apologies. I apologize.
Ron, why are they still sticking to Florida? Why aren't they saying we're going to go to Maine? We're going to go to Vermont. We're going to go to upstate New York. We're going to play all of our games in Cooperstown. Why is it that they have decided or insisted on staying in Florida?
I think where the challenge for them probably comes is that, they, 60, 90 days ago when they started putting these plans together, that was back when Florida, hadn't really closed down as much as other states,
right.
And so and cases weren't really an issue, 60 or 90 days ago.
Correct.
So they started putting the processes in place to play their seasons there. And at this point, do you stop your season for another 60 or 90 days to try and implement the same infrastructure in another part of the country that you've done? Not saying right or wrong, because it's obviously wrong, but at this point, it's like they're kind of locked in because they've put all of this money, all of these resources into getting Florida ready as to where they're going to do this. And yes, now Florida is spiking in the last few weeks, but their only other option now is to take Florida as a complete loss and do the same thing in another area of the country, with the hopes that the same thing doesn't repeat itself. That, maybe they want to try and go to Cooperstown, or they want to try and go to Maine. What happens if a spike happens there? So I think at this point, it's purely a financial decision. They've put the money in to try and do their seasons in the state of Florida, and they're going to put people's lives in jeopardy, and they're going to try and get it done.
Well, then I'm just glad that that I'm not in that position, because I think it's terrible that you've got these athletes who are being told by the team owners, their bosses, in effect, we expect you to leave your house every day and come here and put and risk getting exposure out in the public for our benefit. I'm glad that my employer would not, do the same for me.
And it's interesting to see what is happening now in collegiate sports, in that the Ivy League has canceled all fall sports. The Big Ten Conference just announced that they will be doing conference-only games, so they will be canceling all non-conference games. And again, you have to question whether those will happen. But
And the idea of that is just to keep the players more localized.
I think some of it is, I don't know that it's the case of trying to keep the players more localized, but when you look at the big money TV contracts that they have, it's all about conference games. Like, nobody cares if Penn State doesn't play Kent State or Rutgers this year. No one's going to miss those games. But if Penn State can't play Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, that's going to be an issue. And I can tell you from working in the hotel industry and being in markets where, there are these huge collegiate football programs.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to cut you off. Did you use the current tense for
I did, yes.
your time in the hotel industry? Because I think it would be more appropriate.
Have a job in the hotel industry, as much as you might like to beat me down over it. But
I just think that you should be using past tense about the time you worked in the hotel industry.
But let's look at State College, for example.
Of course.
For
state?
Every Penn State game, Beaver Stadium holds 108,000 plus people.
Including Jerry Sandusky.
You think about the money that they spend on hotel rooms, on restaurants, on
hookers,
shopping, on alcohol,
drugs,
on hookers, drugs, everything else. And now, by going to a conference-only schedule, you're erasing, 4 or 5 games off the calendar. And you're doing that in a multitude of markets. So again, think about the financial impact that's going to have on those cities and on those individuals, which, we're hoping to have something to look forward to in the fall and the winter.
And a lot of those towns, their only industry are college sports.
Correct.
It's not like a major metropolitan area that's like, hey, we're open. It's like, listen, we have 8 home games a year, and that's where we make our money for the entire year.
You look at these major college towns, 40% of the population of the town are the college students. And so these are also the areas that did not have significant number of cases, because when the coronavirus started to peak, schools closed, they sent everybody down, everybody home. So no one was getting sick. You look at Penn, you look at State College, you look at Ohio State, where they're located. You look at all these major university areas, and their hospitals were actually laying people off because that was how few cases they have. And now, they're going to be impacted by this. And again, it's the right decision to make. And I'm not even sure how you play a conference schedule. I guess maybe the thought process is if you play 6 games instead of 12 games, maybe you cut the risk in half that people are going to get sick.
How the fuck do you play football right now? How the fuck do you play basketball?
Well,
those are sports that require very close contact with each other.
If you're a kid, and especially if you're someone who has the potential to go on to play in the NFL or to play in the NBA or anything like that, if you're a player at like a New York school or a Pennsylvania school and you need to go play Florida, Florida State, Arizona State, University of Georgia, you mean to tell me you're going to feel comfortable traveling to any of those states right now? Forget about just the danger that your own teammates might present. Would you step foot in any of those states knowing that your potential future and your potential earning capacity could be changed forever because of it?
If I thought that by not playing those games, I was ensuring that I was never going to be viewed on a national scale by pro scouts, yeah, you're absolutely fucking right. I'm going to go knowing that I'm putting my life on the line, because my other option is to stay home while those games are played. And I'm ensuring that I'm going to move to my small bumfuck town when I expire my 4 years of college eligibility. And I'm going to go work in a mill that doesn't exist anymore, only because I've watched too many 1980s America movies, where the sports star, only alternative to life is working in the local factory. Rudy, All the Right Moves, Risky Business, Cocktail, Weekend at Bernie's.
All right, you've gone off the rails again.
By the way, I'm going to just say this. A stout beer after an hour outside the refrigerator, not as good as when it's right out of the refrigerator.
It's thick, no doubt. Before it runs too much longer here, we wanted to hit on a few celebrity passings. I know this one hurt you, my friend.
Nick Cordero. Nick Cordero, star of many Broadway plays like House of Rock, School of Jazz, Blood Clot Island. One Leg Timmy.
It's very rare that you pain me, but you pain me with that one. So we've spoken about Nick Cordero and in his passing.
This says 6.3%, but I believe that the number only goes higher as the beer gets warmer.
So Oscar-winning composer of film scores Ennio Morricone, passing away at the age of 91, scored some 500 movies.
If you look at the body of this guy's work, I mean, he made his bones with the spaghetti westerns.
Yes.
Which I think, even if you never watch spaghetti western movies, you know damn well The Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
Yes.
You know damn well those other movies.
Yeah.
I mean, you could listen to these soundtracks and be taken to a place without watching the movie. It literally is that compelling of a piece of music. And not only that, but he then graduated to doing other types of movies, all dramas, no porn. Don't. I'm not trying to get inappropriate or anything.
All right.
But the guy's body of work is fucking insane. Literally was considered the gold standard of Hollywood composing.
Well, passing away at the age of 91. And then Mary Kay Letourneau, former Washington State teacher who became infamous for her sexual relationship with a 12-year-old student, passing away from colon cancer at the age of 58. In the summer of 1996, she became famous as a 34-year-old married mother of 4 who had a sexual relationship with one of her sixth grade students, whom she later married.
After serving a prison sentence.
Yes.
I mean, this, as much as and keep in mind, during the coronavirus and Black Lives Matters and fuck American racist movements that are going on right now, hot teachers having sex with students has really taken a back seat, along with school shootings, primarily because school is no longer in session. But, this woman literally started the American phenomenon of blonde female teachers fucking their underage students, which literally game changer if you are following American current events.
Well, so eventually, she became pregnant with her student's child back in 1997. Ended up serving 6 months, but then going back to jail again after having sex with him as a teenager again. They married in May of 2005. It is very interesting to see all of the different media outlets kind of talk about this, because some people kind of say, oh, well, she is the teacher that had sexual relations with one of her students, where others are just like, she's a teacher that raped one of her students.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is where you get your news. I think
Yeah.
the conservative media is reporting her as a rapist. I think that
And they're not wrong. I mean, she was convicted of rape.
Yes. He was underage and legally incapable of giving consent.
I will say, though, there is a skit they did on Saturday Night Live a couple of years ago with Pete Davidson, and it was when Ronda Rousey was hosting, and I forget who one of the other female comedians on the show is, but the gist of the thing was that he had sex with both of these women who were his teachers, and it was in court, and like he's like, how did your students react? Well, they refer to me as things like King Dick, Big Daddy, and also the Denzel Washington way of saying my man. And Kenan Thompson's the judge. He's like, you mean my man? I don't know why, it just always cracks me up.
Ron, rape is not funny.
It's not. It is not. So I apologize.
Rape is never funny.
This is a teachable moment, and I hope we all learn from this. Well, my whiskey's kicking in. I don't know about your porter. We've got.
Hold on a second. Wait a second.
What?
If your whiskey's kicking in, and my high alcohol beer is kicking in, what on earth is there left for us to do right now?
We got to go do a Patreon. So you folks that have listened to this free podcast, we love you. Thank you for joining us. You're going to miss us talking about Kanye West running for president. We've got some PP loan stuff. We've got some COVID-inspired 4-hour erections. You're going to miss out on that. The only way you can really capture that je ne sais quoi is if you go to ronandbrianpodcast.com. Upper right-hand corner says become a patron. It always confuses me because it says patron.
Doesn't matter. Roll with it. You are hammered. You are drunk. Go with it.
So click.
You are a strong bitch. You are a queen.
You can join our Patreon for as low as $5. You get swag for it. We've got masks coming in, which I feel we will probably add as swag on Patreon. But you will also have access to additional audio and video content. Listen, we appreciate that you listen each and every week, but we would love it if you throw us some cash, because we're probably going to try and upgrade this whole visual experience. We may be going live every week very soon. We're in negotiations with some different networks. Might be making an exciting announcement in the next few weeks.
And one of the great things about us having the ability to go live is that we will be able to in real time allow our listeners to join us.
Yes, call in, hop in on the feed. Listen,
and I'm not
mentioned earlier, we want to speak to the undecided voters out there. So
and it's
going to be putting
possible
those as well.
It's also possible, and I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I'm saying it's possible that people who are paid Patreon subscribers might be given priority placement in joining us on the podcast.
We're all about pay to play.
As little as $5 a month gets you access. It gets you swag. It gets you, depending on your level of membership, stickers, refrigerator magnets, baseball caps, COVID masks, where I will breathe into each mask before putting them in the mail, so that you may, if you're lucky, I may expel some of my antibodies through my breath mist into the mask, so that as you breathe in, you're breathing in my fucking antibodies.
Brian has the antibodies. That's all I got. All right. Anything else this week, Brian, or should we just move on to the Patreon?
Only thing I'm going to say is I'm going to crack open a cold beer, because I think this Patreon that we're rolling up to is going to be fucking awesome.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Boom.